Okay, excellent. And I'm not sure, I hope everybody got the link to this, but either way, it's being recorded. And when Eric is out of retreat, then he'll put this up on YouTube. And we're going to continue today with Saraha's Queen Doha. But let's take a moment and settle into meditation for about 10 minutes, just resting our minds. Say body, speech, and mind, beginning with allowing your body to rest freely like a mountain, open, fast, but stable, not moving. Letting your breath be natural, coming and going as it is, or it does. Letting your gaze be the direct experience of awareness that is beyond labeling, beyond projection. Let your mind be open, fast, spacious. And we'll sit like this together for 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And just gently bring yourself back to the group. Alrighty. So we will continue where we left off. So I'll just take it back one stanza so that there's continuity. So Saraha says, searching spaciousness without center or circumference, nothing can be seen. Exploring the mind and experience, finding no trace of anything solid, failing to find the mind that is exploring, seeing nothing, that is truly seeing. And and so he is basically, reiterating the importance of resting into this open spaciousness without center, without edge. Right? And as we do this, of course, things can be seen, right? There's the clutter of my, family's everyday life is able to be seen. But what he's getting at is it's not that we don't see anything, it's that what we see when we're resting in this way is able to be experienced in this very unimpeded way where what is there, but it is not, the overwhelming experience of lamp or fan or chair or plants or, overwhelming painting, overwhelming couch, coffee table, candlestick, right? The conceptual nature of everything, when we rest our mind, dissolves. And as that happens, things are able to just be as they are without it having to be a tremendous amount of a big deal. Exploring the mind and experience, finding no trace of anything solid, failing to find the mind that is exploring, seeing nothing, that is truly seeing. Right? So you can't, kind of like back in, school when our math teachers might have said, show your work, show how you got to that, that answer, right? We can't, right? We just can't see that. It's not there. It's not apparent in that way. Right. And so this is kind of, one of the key ways of not only practicing, but in this stanza, it's, indicated as showing the way to realization, right? This is the way we experience realization, by resting into this. So we don't have to get hyper obsessed with an intense shamatha, which is, I am now seeing this, and focusing, like a laser beam, all tense and tight on this thing and that thing. It's just everything is able to be without it being a big deal. So then he goes on to say, this next section is on the way to attain the unchangeable realization. And so now we're moving into, fresher territory where Saraha says, like a crow caught on a ship at sea, flying off, circling, and then returning to the mast, the aspiring mind, its dualization arrested, settles in the pristine nature of its original face. Unmoved by any contingency, lurking hopes and fears are destroyed. That is the diamond mind, Vajrasattva. So like a crow caught in a ship, you find this kind of metaphor in a couple different places, right? A crow on a ship will fly out as far as it reasonably can, and then come back, right? When you're at sea, there's nowhere for it to go. It's not going to fly across the ocean by itself. Right? And so just like this, right? Letting the crow of awareness go. Right? Go as far as it does. And invariably it returns. We don't have to make a big deal out of the mast being there. The aspiring mind, its dualization arrested, settles in the pristine nature of its original face. So it settles into, again, for those who are interested in Dzogchen, this kadak, right? This unfabricated, naturally pure, naturally resourced location, right? This is where it comes from, right? So the crow comes back, right, to the natural state. And why does it come back? Because there's essentially nothing for it to come back to, right, other than a tremendous amount of fabrication and human neurosis and things like this. Unmoved by any contingency, lurking hopes and fears destroyed. That is diamond mind, Vajrasattva. Right. So, this is also kind of nice. I mean, he's not talking about it in this way, but oftentimes when we think of Vajrasattva these days, it's often just in the context of Nundro, right? It's like, oh, that's a purification practice I need to do. Right? But Vajrasattva is so much more than that. Vajrasattva is the, naturally pure, constantly arising, unstainable essence of our being. Right? And so when we say essence, I was going to say essence of mind, but the problem with that is that creates this bifurcation between mind and body and experience and all of this, right? So Vajrasattva is the unity of it all. And what's interesting too, like, I don't mean to sound critical of the way people practice Nundro, but when people practice Nundro, it's often, I'm taking this purification medicine to, remove my sins because I'm such a schmuck, and I'm broken and I'm terrible and I have all these problems and I have all these neuroses, right? And so really Vajrasattva practice is not it's the root of it is, yes, quote unquote, purifying our mind stream, but not in a dualistic way, right? It's settling into our natural state, right? Our natural state is Vajrasattva. As long as we ascribe to this idea of Buddha nature as Sujata Garbha, that fundamental purity is constantly present. The whole purpose of Vajrasattva practice is to be able to return just to that, right? And also to return to an appreciation of that, right? Not this disordered way of thinking where we're just trying to scrub ourselves clean because we're feeling really guilty about things or shameful, etc. And so, in this way, Vajrasattva exists as a example of Mahamudra. And it doesn't arise here, but there are some songs, some dohas on Mahamudra. I think by Varupa, there's one where he, it begins with an homage to Vajrasattva, right? So, it's nice to claim or reclaim Vajrasattva back from this kind of, dualistic kind of practice back into this non-dual sense. Vajrasattva is awakened mind, right? And not just some abstract, it is our shared awakened mind. So let me move into the next part of the song, which is described as Mahamudra as the way, right? So this is really the practice of meditation. And so the first aspect of this is demonstrating Mahamudra non-meditation. And so Saraha sings, the mind in and of itself, thoroughly explored, is like the sky. Non-meditation arrests the dualizing function of mind, and genuine natural perception of the common light of day is untarnished by alluring fictions. The mind, inherently pure, can never be defiled. Without grasping or releasing, mind forms rest easy. Right? So we'll break this down a little bit. The mind itself, thoroughly explored, is like the sky. Right? And so we're going to rather get into a philosophical thing, right? We can, because that's really not particularly useful, get into the experience of this. When we look at the experience of mind in meditation, it is like the sky. Where does the sky end? I'm sure many of you as kids, I used to do this all the time, try and figure out like when does the sky really start? Does it start like right above grass and like everything from there is sky? Or does sky start at, an agreed upon, 300 meters in the air? Or does sky start even further? Right? Same thing with mind. Right? Where does mind end here? It's real close, 1 inch from my body, right? Or go out, etc. Right. So this open inquiry, this open experience, right? If we use the term inquiry, it's important to maybe not go down the road of making it too neurotic. Non-meditation arrests the dualizing function of mind, and genuine natural perception in the common light of day is untarnished by alluring fictions. And so this process of non-meditation causes this separation between self and other, right? Whoever, I'm gonna just Anne and Anne's pen that she's holding, or pencil, or anybody's things, right? That is arrested, right? That the kind of big, intense chasm between self and other, and everything that is born of that, right, is naturally resolved as we experience non-meditation, and it causes this genuine natural perception in the common light of day to arise in such a way that's free of, and this term alluring fictions is used, so free of, like, again, self and other, and all the storylines, all the narrative creation, right? All the cognitive dissonance, all of the fictions, all of the, all of what we tell each other, so wherever we look, right, in this non-meditation kind of way, we're just looking, right, just letting everything happen without getting involved in heavy meaning making. Oh, this, oh God, Richard showed up now, so blah 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 blah, or oh, you know yesterday it was raining and now it's sunny. And even that's too much information. Who cares? Just, directly experiencing and letting things go. The mind inherently pure can never be defiled, right? So like all of the stories, all of the fictions, all of the, and don't get me wrong, like the stressors, right? All of the, the things we need to figure out in life and do and attend to, and, weird abstract things like retirement, whatever that means, and, other kinds of bizarre, things we seem to have to always be thinking about or something, right? Even those don't stain, the mind. None of our thoughts stain the mind. Right? None of our brokenness stains the mind. Right? The mind inherently pure can never be defiled. And so this is like as if Saraha is like shooting a grappling hook, pulling Mahamudra and Dzogchen very close to one another. Right? This he's describing, Kadak Chakcha, even though it's a different system. Without grasping or releasing, mind forms rest easy. Right? So again, when you settle, when you rest directly into the experience of phenomena as it arises, do so in a way that is easy and relaxed, right? Without grasping or without releasing. Nothing to hold on to, nothing to let go of. Just letting everything happen. It's fascinating too to kind of just feel into your somatic experience of this as well. When we, there's kind of a real physical release that can accompany this, because we don't need, like, who, like, pardon my French, but who in God's name cares, right? Like, all we're doing is sitting and resting into this experience of what's happening, right? We don't need to be tight about the temperature. We don't need to be tight about space. We don't need to be tight about the nature of the forms around us. Maybe we can just let go a bit. And often it's refreshing because whether we are aware of it or not, we often move through space as if we are propping up the entirety of the universe, right? That the whole, you know, thingness of this, as if it will fall apart, you know, based on us being here or not. I find that very refreshing. So Saraha goes on to say, no meditative process exists in unrealized mind, and neither meditator nor object arises in realized mind. Sky as sky can never be objectified. Likewise, emptiness cannot meditate on emptiness. The unity of metaphoric, multiform perception, like a mixture of milk and water, arises constantly in the one taste of pure delight. This is good. No meditative process exists in unrealized mind, and neither meditator nor object arises in realized mind. So again, this is really about these, the subtleties of the kind of discursive analysis that happens, very naturally. Sky as sky can never be objectified, right? So how can you objectify the sky? Because we don't actually even know where it starts and where it begins, right? We can maybe, we could say, oh, well, the sky is blue, but yesterday here it was raining, right? So the sky, when I look up at the sky, it wasn't blue, it was gray, right? And filled with water. Right? The mind can't objectify itself because the mind is beyond objectification. Even when confusion arises, the experience of confusion is the experience of mind, which is pure and unstained, even by confusion. And so what this means is that if we can get comfortable with this and, train in this by coming back to it and coming back to it and coming back to it, we begin to see that there's actually a lot less to do than we actually tend to assume. Because when we start this, we tend to assume that we're starting at point A and we have to go to point B. But the whole point is that point A and point B arise at exactly the same time, at the same rate, right? And the division between A and B, is just a thing. It's not a big deal, right? There's no, mind starts off primordially pure. Our whole journey is to realize that it's primordially pure, but we're not actually operating from any lack of purity to begin with. So then Saraha goes on to say, this next part is called showing meditation as indistinguishable from non-meditation. This is kind of where I was going. In that way, in all situations and at all times, blend with the authentic, unlimited mental sphere of inaction. Thank goodness. And finally, an instruction made for me. Very dim-witted me, right? So blend with the authentic, unlimited mental sphere of inaction. Sustaining suchness is conventional meditation, right? So we're not doing jack, just resting at all times. Blending with inaction means don't try so hard. It means don't objectify. Don't become obsessed with the goal. And both in Mahamudra and Dzogchen, you often find the term, practicing the fruit or practicing the goal as the path, right? What is the goal? The mind is free and unstainable, unbreakable, unmarrable. How do we practice this? By letting your mind be unstainable, unbreakable, unmarrable. How do we do this? By not doing anything, right? By not trying to clean it, or by not trying to work the dents out of it, because those dents aren't even there. Right. And so again, what does this not mean? This doesn't mean, oh, go do whatever you want. But it does mean, be relaxed. Just open up to what's actually happening. Right? Stop trying so hard. Stop trying to figure it out. And it's not about that. Stop worrying. Stop the hope and stop the fear. Stop the confusion. Sustaining suchness is conventional Mahamudra meditation. So it goes on to say, the wind blows where it lists, and the mind is not bound. Let unstructured perception wander like a small child. Right? So like a little child, unstructured, right? Everything is pretty okay. Right? Little child would pick up a huge knife if it were there. Right? Or they might try and pick up a snake if a snake is there, right? They might pick up, something that we in our minds go, oh, don't touch that. Oh, there's risk, there's danger, there's all this kind of stuff. When reflective thought arises, look at its empty nature, remembering that waves are not different from the water. Right. So when reflective thought arises, oh, that's interesting. Da, 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 da. Oh. Ah. Oh, you're making all the sounds we might make when we're thinking of things. Oh no, not that. I just look directly at it, not like a laser beam, not super hard. Don't have to get super intense. We're not these like intense philosophers, and let those people die of their headaches. Right? Remembering that the waves are not different than the water. Right? That the thought that arises is the purity of mind. Right? The thought's not the problem. Right? The thought is the thing. Just, it's just what's happening. Now, this is like, I kind of feel like I didn't actually necessarily always feel this way, but I kind of feel like this is good, stupid dharma, where we really don't need a ton of education to do this. Right? We just need yeah, it's helpful when you're tired, frankly, like this kind of practice, right? Like, because you're like, man, I don't want to get any big thick books. I don't have to memorize any like crazy terms. I don't want to have to figure out what Chandrakirti says about this, or Dharmakirti, or Nagarjuna. And it doesn't mean that I don't care about those things, but I guess what I'm saying is that that's not necessary. It's necessary for the people for whom it is, and that's great if one really wants to go down that road, but one doesn't have to. I think that's what's really refreshing about this too. And I think the thing that's a little hard sometimes, maybe more so for Americans, is that we're all kind of tend to be raised to be experts. Like, we value that. Oh, be an expert, be the best, know it all kind of thing. And this kind of practice, you can't know. So funny. I was scrolling through Instagram this morning, and some very erudite person I'm not going to name, there's some clip of them talking about non-duality, and it was all very, very philosophical, and I could appreciate it, but I was like, man, that is not the way I teach. That's just not, it's not my thing. And then almost shortly thereafter, I remembered, Anizamo really like begrudgingly saying, like, if you have to read anything about this, read and forget at the same time. She's like, I get being curious, no sweat, that's not a problem. But forget the words as you read them, right? Because all they do is lead to more labels, right? More labels, potentially more structure, right? And then that structure comes and comes and comes, and then all of a sudden we think we know what it is, right? But sometimes we don't, right? And who wants to take that risk? I don't. I'm happy being, a stupid meditation teacher. So, remembering that the waves are not different from the water. So all the greatest, most clear arguments and defenses of arguments that can arise in the mind, and that is this nature of open awareness. The moment we hold on, we fall out of relationship to the open awareness, and we've begun, the split, right? This objectification, this self and other. In one way, we have to let go of these things. Mm-hmm. So then the next portion, showing by simile that free of its reifying tendencies, released from the three cogs, or cognitions, subject, object, and interaction, ordinary consciousness is Mahamudra as the way. So it goes on to say, in unstructured, non-conceptual Mahamudra, lacking any hint of technique, non-meditation arises. In actual non-meditation, only supreme meditation. Right? So again, in this unstructured, non-conceptual Mahamudra, this is kind of the the murky source of all philosophy, right? The swamp-like, just fluidity, right, of resting into awareness. Non-conceptual Mahamudra, lacking any hint of technique, meditation or non-meditation arises. So again, letting go of, oh, my back, this, the 7 points of Virachana, right? Shoulders open like a vulture's wings, chin down, gaze a particular way, tongue in the roof of your mouth, gaze, like what they say, sometimes 8 or 4 finger widths from the nose, in lotus position, all this stuff, right? That's great. Lying down, riding on a tricycle, riding on a horse, sleeping Mahamudra, sitting on a boat, standing on one's head. All of these, they're all equal. Doesn't really matter. Right? We get super addicted to form. We get very afraid. Am I actually really, is what I'm doing Mahamudra? Well, when we rest in a non-meditation, it all, becomes one slippery glimpse, one big wet mess. That's great. I mean, if you can be into it, be into it. Okay. In actual non-meditation, only supreme meditation, lacking any hint of technique, non-meditation arises. Right? Lacking any form of focus or obsession around how it has to be, then non-meditation can happen. The taste of pure delight is coincident with non-duality. The one flavor of two drops of water commingling. In the sphere of the sameness of non-meditation, allowing its mental projections, the mind is perfectly serene. So the taste of pure delight or bliss is coincident with non-duality. Right? Bliss and non-duality arise as one. The one flavor or one taste of two drops commingling. Right? Bliss and non-duality arise at the same time. In the sphere of the sameness of non-meditation, right, this one taste, right, everything becomes, essentially one taste. Allowing its mental projections, the mind is perfectly serene. And so as we rest into this experience of just letting everything happen, I don't have to freak out about dust on the floor, the random toys, all the different stuffs. Everything can be allowed to just be what it is, which is exactly the same as everything else. So let's pause. I want to see if anyone has any questions or thoughts or feelings, or now's the time for us to throw the hot potato around and see what's up. So what's up? Are people feeling good or bewildered? Yes, yeah, Anne. Oh, I think you're muted.
So what is the place of formalized practice in, or is there a place for formalized practice in allowing you to see in this way, or does this way just happen? I don't understand the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great question. So formal practice is important because this is where we kind of get our chops down. When I was we moved to New York City when I was 7 years old, and at the time, there was this kid a couple years older than me who was kidnapped from like the same elementary school I went to, and my parents were concerned, so they enrolled me in karate. And so I got like just shy of a black belt. Like by the time I was in middle school, I was a brown belt with a black stripe. And at that point, you know, I had gone like, two or three times a week, like, through elementary school into the beginning of middle school. And then I had to in the test, I had to fight five people, like, it was like for an hour. Like five people come in the test and you have to defend yourself, right? And so I did that, and then my parents were like great, congratulations. I was like, yeah, it's good. I was like, okay, I want to stop now because like when are five people who know karate are gonna like try and jump me in New York City? Like that's not gonna happen. And they're like, good point, you're done, right? But the point is like all of the formal training, and in karate, like there are these like formal kind of it's almost like transmission of techniques through these things called katas. They're like exercises of you know depending on the one, maybe like 12 to 16 different moves, right? And you practice them in a very wooden way, right? It's like I remember, again, as a kid being like, why, like how's this going to help me, right? I'm doing this like regimented, step by step by step set of exercises. But then it means that when you then get into these training situations where five people come, right, then you're able to actually use all of these different things right? In the flow that is necessary and dictated by what is happening in the moment, right? Which is situationally quite different than what would happen in, under the course of just the straight kind of training, um, you know, modality. And so that's why, because so we need to kind of, discipline ourselves to some extent in the beginning, right? And some of that is really just like sitting with boredom, like, or sitting through, let's say somebody's like, okay, like I need to do my practice and I've got some time after lunch, and somebody's, you either make your own lunch or you have a lunch that's a little heavy, and then you sit down to practice and you're like, oh, now I'm very tired and sleepy, and then practicing with that, right? Or one is going through some kind of grief, and then practicing with that sense of loss, right, and grieving. So the formal practice is helpful for these reasons, right? It really causes us to be able to gain a greater sense of how to show up in a disciplined way. And then at a point, right, and this is not like determined really by time or anything, at the same time, rather, we should also train in being open and fluid and able to you know float in the ocean and practice Mahamudra, right? Or experience tremendous joy doing something quite ordinary, right, and rest into Mahamudra. Ultimately though, like the as one becomes increasingly adept, the non-meditation aspect of this bleeds in whether we like it or not, right? And then we have to get a little comfortable with letting things go a little bit. It's kind of like becoming a food critic, for example, after a certain moment being like, well, I think I'm gonna have to get a belly because of this work. I'm just trying food all the time. You know what I mean? And that's okay. Like the acceptance of the transcendence eventually of the form itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. And do you have to train in one tradition?
I don't think so. My root teacher she taught Mahamudra and Trekcha at the same time, right? Because they're basically the same. People get weird about like, oh, well, what about the lineages? Like, that's everybody looks for a reason to have a problem. The fascinating thing is that a lot of the Nyingma folks started claiming Saraha, and so it's not uncommon to find, that perhaps, Tujum Lingpo was, recognizes the reincarnation of Saraha. So I think it's okay to practice different techniques, of Mahamudra. You can do, Drinkung, Drikpa, and Karma Kaju. You can do, Shangpa. You can do Treksha, right? Because what's the whole kind of point of this is the liberation of our mind, right? And not the like classification of practitioners into different lineages. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it goes some way to answering it. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And then kind of going back though to practicing with like, in a formal way, like the real kind of traditional shamatha vipassana union of both of them that we find in kind of later presentations of Mahamudra. Yes, you can practice that and you can practice this at the same time. I think the thing is, though, my personal opinion is that while the kind of what became, because this like heavy duty thick meditation manual description of shamatha and then vipassana and then the union of both of them sometimes runs the risk of being a little too formulaic and when people don't understand that there are not hard lines between all of these things. You know,
Okay.
shamatha, when you use shamatha using, you know, the mind as the anchor, right? You're moving right into Laktong, right? There's no like line where it's like, okay, now you're at the edge, you've completed, you know, the mind naturally becomes aware of itself, right? The more quiescence happens, you know, that awareness does not have to be applied by us. This is my only kind of like slight discomfort with these kind of over delineated systems is that they suggest that we're in control of this. And the thing is like, yes, to some extent, you know, we could say that that is true a little bit. But the thing is all we're trying to do is relax to the point that mind can recognize its own true nature. And that is not something that is human affected, right? That is just the way it has been since before the Buddha was born, right?
Yes.
That's kind of I think worth keeping in mind. You know, it's a little bit like, you know, learn about the techniques and then really like give yourself a break of not holding on too tightly to them.
Okay, and just one last thing, to
Of course.
set the environment for safe and effective practice, if you like. And I mean, I know that's not quite in the realm of where you are, but the prayer from the Guru Yoga, bless me that my mind gives up ego grasping, bless me that contentment, is that a good place to start a practice, to set up your practice?
Yeah, absolutely.
That prayer.
Yeah, that prayer, absolutely. You know, it helps to unpack the meaning of it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So like, you know, so with respect to like ego clinging, how does ego clinging translate into Mahamudra, right? Is so, you know, bless me to release ego clinging, we could say is
Yes.
bless me to release from the objectification of self and other, external and internal, right? Because that's the only
Yes.
thing that causes it. And that's also helpful just because then, you know, what is a prayer that can end up being a little wooden from time to time becomes really alive and dynamic.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was thinking. And when you see it, like, I don't care who the teacher is, if they're in that zone and you can connect to them, then you can connect to that. Is
Exactly.
that correct?
I think so.
That's my question, because I mean, I've been a bit multicultural when it comes to religious all things religious, Christian and Buddhist. I have been, but I've always found people that are like that, and then you see them like that there and like that there, and whether they're distant or whether they're near, they're there, and that's there too, and that's there because it's here and it's there.
Absolutely.
Whether,
You know, like I think that it's ultimately a human suffering that will cause us to, you know, sometimes we shrink it, right? Because we get a little afraid of, oh,
yes.
could it be, you know, could Thomas Merton have it too? You know, I don't know if you've ever like Thomas Merton's like Asia journals, like they're so his like journals when he was traveling in India before he died in Thailand. If you haven't read it, you should, because
Okay.
it's quite short, and actually you can get them on Amazon for very cheap, and like as a Kindle in the Kindle format. But he meets with Chatra Rinpoche, he meets with previous Kala Rinpoche, he meets with the Dalai Lama, he meets with Trungpa right after he came down from Bhutan to reveal from where he revealed the sadhana of Mahamudra. And all of them were like, oh God, you're incredible. You know, and Chatra Rinpoche in particular was like, you know, when you come back, you know, when you're done in Thailand, come back, you know, and we'll keep going. And he died. You know,
Yeah.
it's so fascinating.
But
It's
when he saw the sleeping Buddhas, he said, "When I saw the sleeping Buddhas, I realized everything was wisdom. I realized everything was compassion."
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And what I especially like about, engaging people like Thomas Merton in this way, and of course more contemporary people as well, is it draws home, some of these things that Saraha and all of these others are pushing at too, which is like, it's not owned by any one particular technique.
Yeah.
It's not owned by any one particular lineage or anything like this.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. That's really, really important to me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Yeah. Any other thoughts or reflections or complaints to the complaint department? Okay. Good. Right. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't feeling too wooden. God forbid. Okay. So then meditation as the way, right? The focus on activity. So Saraha goes on to say, showing the equivocal praxis of Mahamudra. Keho, listen with joy. In the yoga of ultimate non-duality, why would I reject or cultivate anything? I have left attachment and antipathy behind. But do not call me a child. Like the equivocal philosopher's stone, the yogin's behavior is uncertain, but they take unwarranted criticism of their equivocation rather, for the yogin's mind is always one. Although in singularity, it still has no substantiality, and his multifarious enactments are baseless. Free and unpredictable like a mad person, their uninhibited behavior seems like the play of a child. Right? So this is also very refreshing to me. It's okay, listen to this with joy. All right, so with joy, we have to feel really joyful about this. In the yoga of ultimate non-duality, why would I reject or cultivate anything? I feel I think so. Anne is definitely not an American, and I know that Remy is in Canada, and Richard is about to go back to New Zealand, and I envy all of you because this, acceptance and rejection. This is like so American right now, right? Push pull, like fighting, everyone, everything, right? And so I was like, why would I go down either one of these routes? Why in the world? Right? Why would I reject or cultivate anything? I have left attachment and antipathy behind, but do not call me a child. Like the equivocal philosopher's stone, the yogin's or yogini's behavior is uncertain, right? I'm just doing. But they take unwarranted criticism of their equivocation. For the yogin or yogini's mind is always one, although in the singularity, it still has no substantiality, right? So the singularity of it is this one taste, right? And people might say, well, look at you, you're all over the place. I can't pin you down. It's like, well, I've experienced, quote unquote, the one mind, right? I've experienced this one taste, this experience of ultimate reality. All of this kind of, coming and going that everybody's obsessed with is a waste of time. The yogin's mind is only one, right? Only one in this particular way. Although in singularity, it still has no substantiality. And their multifarious enactments are baseless, free and unpredictable like a mad person. Their uninhibited behavior seems like the play of a child. And so, again, like that little child that was referenced earlier in an earlier stanza of, letting our awareness just wander unstructured like a young child, right? This is the activity. Who cares if your shoes or socks match? Right? It's like the ultimate relief. Like we don't need to worry so much. Oh my God. All of the like You know, a lot of the social stuff, you know, oh, who cares, right? Just let it go, right? If there's no difference between sky and mind and trees and bees and fire hydrants and wheels and, you know, horses and telephone poles and honking cars and tweeting birds. You know, why are we following all this, you know, all this like highly structured stuff? You know? And then why do we experience all of the difficult feelings that we do, all of the shame, the lack of self-worth, right, when we're not following the order? It's quite bizarre, right? You know, I mean, Anne's cat probably has more of an innate relationship to Mahamudra than any one of us. Just coming and going as they do. Right, so this is the activity. So the second part of meditation as the way activity is showing that in their enactment, so Saraha, showing that in his enactment, he is immune to external circumstances. So Saraha says, Amaho, listen with joy. The yogin's lotus-like mind, immune to evil, thrives in the slime of existence. Contented, hunger assuaged, and thirst slaked, or diseased in body and stricken in mind, enacting in any of innumerable dramas, he is never trapped, they are never trapped, never freed, and always innocent. Right? The yogin's lotus-like mind, right? Lotus-like, obviously, lotus, you know, arising from mud, but not being touched by it. Immune to evil, right? Because of its kadak, its primordial purity, etc. Thrives in the slime of existence, this kind of mushy, weird, you know, thing. All this stuff happening. Contented, hunger assuaged, and thirst slaked, or diseased in body and stricken in mind, who cares? Enacting any of innumerable dramas, they are never trapped, never freed, and always innocent. Okay. Oh, you know, this is about you know, and in one way we could say like breaking through all of the ideas, breaking through who we think we are, breaking through what we think we should do, breaking through even just going about doing. I mean, it's worth doing, like, you know, maybe making the commitment tomorrow to show up to Wednesday different than you would the rest of the days this week. Do something totally different, you know. You know, let yourself go. You know, believe it or not, we're not holding up the axis of the universe. No, we can afford to get a little weird. Right. So the third part of this is showing how the yogins or yoginis or some other, you know, blending of being detached from compassion arises spontaneously to benefit others. And so Sraha says, pain and exhaustion of benighted beings arising in the realized yogin's dispassionate sphere. By dint of unrestrained compassion, his tears flow. And in the epitome of charity, self and other are reconciled. And so like, this also comes up actually in Hatha Yoga as well, right? That when we are able to experience this kind of, you know, open, free, dynamic flow of everything, and that, you know, rest into this experience of non-meditation, compassion naturally comes next, right? Because of the ridiculous violence, even in labeling things, you know. or the ridiculous violence of role function. Like, yes, on a relative level, fine, maybe we need some of these things to function in group settings, perhaps, maybe not. I don't think we've ever really tried very hard to look at some other ways of doing this. And, maybe we are doing this, in various ways culturally. But to let go, when we're able to just let go and let everything be, and we're truly in that space, the importance of whether that instruction was an instruction of Thomas Merton or an instruction of Chatra Rinpoche, whether it was Christian or Buddhist, or whether it was this or that, or whether it was high or low, or whether it was dirty or clean, or whether it was inappropriate or appropriate. It's none of these things have those labels, right? Where do those labels come from? Right? And then how much suffering have we felt because of these labels and in relationship to these labels? And so this is where this natural arising compassion comes in two ways. One, we're like, oh my God, what a jarring thing to label everything. Like what a ridiculous waste of time, right? And then when you kind of chase this process down the road a little bit, who does the labeling, right? Who's doing the deciding? And then there's the other side of it, the suffering created by all of the discursiveness created by all of these labels, right? So we see how other people are impacted by it, but we also see how intensely jarring it is for us, right? How that, and then as we see that for ourselves, we don't want anyone to go through this, right? May all beings be free of labels, right? May we be free of even defining characteristics. May everything be, and may everything be unimpededly. But it doesn't need to be defined down to its absolute value, like what we find in our culture, like at least in the US. What's the value of this? Oh, you're studying Vajrayana, what's the value? 50 cents. $10. I don't know. Who cares? Leave me alone. With resolution in emptiness, freed of desire, anger and sloth, all enactment is unreal, like the figment of a dream. With free flowing love, joyful and guileless, the Buddha magician casts their healing spell. And so with resolution and emptiness, I'm resolved here. This is the place to be. Freed of desire, anger, and sloth. All enactment, right? All activity is unreal, right? Is illusory, like a dream. With free flowing love, joyful and guileless, the Buddha magician casts their healing spell. And so as we rest into this experience, we're able to definitively know the illusory nature of all of this. And so these situations that cause harm, right, that are essentially illusory, idea-based, right, constructed in that way. Of course, we're going to use our Buddha-like magic to benefit beings, right? How absurd. And borders is a really good thing. I mean, when you look at the one thing I don't understand about the United States now is we've got this problem with all these migrants coming, or problem for some people, and we also have this looming environmental crisis, which means there's going to be all of this displacement around the world of peoples from different places, right? And then we have these heavily enforced imaginary lines based on concept about nation state X, nation state Y, do not cross this line that doesn't exist except in the minds of all agreed, all agreed upon minds of all humans who are educated in a particular kind of way, and then all of the suffering, that arises by people who can't cross these illusory lines. Okay. National identity is this way too. Right? Even gender identity is this way. Many, many forms of identity. It's unique to the experiencer, and perhaps that's all. But we go around and we say, this is definitively the number two. And then anything that is not this is not two. When, there's a lot more room, a lot more freedom, and a lot more space. And the more we're able to rest into this practice of Mahamudra, or the more we're able to rest into the experience of, Dzogchen, the more that we see how much, is imposed onto this innocent, appearance. And then everything else is forced to be organized around that. It's pretty absurd. And yeah, it's interesting, for people that are interested in the history of philosophy, or the history of ideas, the history of, all this stuff, the history of history. But pain is interesting too, and suffering can be fascinating, but it doesn't mean that we all should be wallowing in it, or, caught in its grasp all the time. And so then Mahamudra's consummation or fruition. So Sra begins with showing the certainty of goal attainment. So Sraha says, our sky-like nature, pure from the beginning, neither lost nor gained, unstructured, non-conceptual Mahamudra. Mahamudra, the goal, cannot be lost. It's not going to fall out of your pocket. Somebody's not going to steal it when you're not looking. Hope itself is originally unborn. So how can anything go missing or be gotten? If anything is to be acquired by anyone, what meaning have the four precepts? Right? And so I guess, yeah, here's the four Mahamudra Samayas: non-abandonment of obscurations, non-application of any remedy, non-meditation upon thusness, non-aspiration or anticipation. And this comes from Lama. Right? So if anything is to be acquired by anyone, right, what is the point of non-abandonment of obscuration, non-application of any remedy, non-meditation upon thusness, non-aspiration or anticipation? Right? So we can't hope too much. Right? Hoping, oh God, I hope. I get it. For suffering. I was talking with somebody earlier today who was talking about, how do you practice when you want the goal so bad? And it's a good question. Let go of the goal, right? And we can let go of the goal, and it doesn't mean we'll never attain it. Right? All it means is we're loosening our grasp. And we're not being so fixated. Hope itself is originally unborn. So how can anything go missing or be gotten or be created or be acquired? Like deluded deer leaping towards the mirage of water, poor fools tormented by unnameable desire strive constantly to satisfy insatiable longing, never getting near their goal. Right? And so this is explained as, showing the error in trying to attain what is already in your hand. Like poor fools tormented by unnameable desire strive constantly to satisfy insatiable longing, never getting near their goal because they're holding, acquiring, I must do more, I must blah blah blah. I'm on pilgrimage to India. I must, you know, fly to Europe to meet this obscure teacher to receive this one transmission. I must buy that book. I must get a PhD in Buddhist studies. I must learn Sanskrit and Pali and then Prakrit. And then I must blah, blah, blah. One of the reasons why we look away all the time at other things is because it's hard to trust that this is it. You know, and a lot of people make a lot of money off of, you know, making it some kind of product. Yeah. Hmm. And then attainment of nothing whatsoever itself is understood as the accomplishment of Vajradhara. Who in the world, who in America wants to attain nothing? Right? Vajradhara must be not a very good career path. Becoming a Vajradhara. What the hell? So, a mirage of water on a dry plain gives the illusion of water where there is none. Just so, the originally pure analytic mind provides neither temporal nor ultimate truth. Sorry. Like a wish fulfilling gem or a wish granting tree, the power of aspiration fulfills all hopes. And remember that all propositions about the external world are vanity, mere convention, and nothing whatsoever is absolute. And this is the Doha Kosha of Mahamudra precepts, or the Doha Kosha Nama Mahamudra Upadesha, composed by the mountain recluse Saraha, translated into the Tibetan by the Indian sage Vairocana Rakshita. And that was that. These are the best, I have to say. You know, Saraha's pretty cool. There's one person I'd like to have come over for dinner. It would be Saraha. um, but yeah, you know, nice and loose, not too tight. Yeah, very relaxed. It's important for us to be very relaxed and not too tight. Self-forgiving, and self-compassionate as we go. Right? Not being, you know, preoccupied with getting there, but maybe allowing ourselves to rest into it and all of the ordinariness of whatever is happening. And maybe that's the point. I'm surprised nobody's ever tried to, I mean, maybe they have, but create a political philosophy out of Saraha's Mahamudra, right? Or a response to a how messed up the world is. Maybe this is the answer. Just each one of us going off into the sunset is spacious beings, and that's it. So maybe we can pause here if there aren't any questions, and um, Tony looks like they're thinking pretty hard.
Don't accuse me of such things. I would never have a thought.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I will never say that again. Tony looks like they're not thinking about anything other than resting into the natural spaciousness of phenomenon. Oh, yeah. Well, maybe we can dedicate the marathon. May all beings be able to forget who they are. May all beings be able to let go of the labeling around their surroundings. May all beings stop trying. May all beings relax. And in so doing, may all beings be able to recognize their mind as no different than Vajrasattva, Vajradhara, or the mind of any one of us. Open, vast, free Buddhahood all the time. So, take very good care, everybody. Be well. See some of you soon, and some of you a little bit later than that. Take care.